Welcome back everyone to GRIMM, Digital Folklore, where we look at the stories and inspiration behind your favorite games. Today, we will be taking a different kind of look at Sekiro as we start a small series analyzing the different endings of the game and what they mean. That said, let's not waste any time and jump right into it with the first of the four endings, Shura. The Shura ending in the game is the ending that most people who played the game are familiar with, since it takes place so much earlier than the other endings. It's also an ending that many people probably stumbled into if they decided to follow Al's words of advice from the beginning of the game. It's the ending that is considered by many to be the bad ending of the game as well. However, in spite of this, I would say that this ending reveals a number of interesting things that I feel are worth mentioning. Let's start by doing a basic rundown of the ending and then breaking it down from there. The path to the Shura ending begins after confronting Al atop Ashina Castle once Kuro rejects his offer. From here, we are offered a choice, to obey the Iron Code and forsake Kuro, or to reject the code and stay loyal to Kuro instead. If we reject the Iron Code, we are forced to defeat Al and the game continues. But if Sekiro chooses to obey the Iron Code, then he is locked into the path of the Shura ending instead. After choosing to obey the Iron Code, Al and Sekiro are interrupted by Emma, who Al orders you to kill. Unfortunately though, as skilled as she is no match for Sekiro. After her death, Isshin himself arrives and confronts Sekiro, preparing to cut Shura down a second time, only to be bested by Sekiro in the end. Shortly after, Al arrives and begins to gloat, confident that his plan has finally succeeded before he is suddenly run through by Sekiro. The game then ends with Kuro crawling to the top of the castle to escape the spreading flames of hatred, only to find Sekiro waiting for him, his left arm wreathed in flames before it fades to black, and the game tells us that Ashina became the scene of a massacre that was haunted for years afterwards by a demon. So what does all of this mean, and what is Shura exactly? Shura is actually a term that can mean a few things, but primarily refers to the Buddhist image of Ashura who reside in Ashurado. In Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 realms of existence: the realm of the gods, the human realm, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, the hell realm, and the realm of the Ashura, or Ashurado. As the name implies, the realm of Ashurado is the one in which the Ashura reside. Based off the Hindu Asura, the Ashura who live in this realm are more commonly seen as demons who are obsessed with warfare, but there's a bit more to them than that. Ashura are better described as something like demigods, beings of great power who can be seen to use that power for good or evil as they desire. In fact, desire is arguably the defining trait of Ashura that separates them from devas and humans. Ashura are beings that are entirely controlled by their emotions. They are capable of feeling joy and excitement far beyond that of a normal human, but they are also very quick to anger and prone to fits of rage as well. Their emotions can even manifest around them, allowing Ashura to quite literally explode with anger as they are wreathed in flames of hatred. This is clearly a behavior we see demonstrated during the Shura ending, as the flames slowly manifest through Sekiro's battles until they are running wild. However, in the Buddhist cosmology, one can typically only become an Ashura after being reincarnated. So it would seem that in the world of Sekiro, Shura is being portrayed somewhat differently. Still, we can use what we know of them to gain a better understanding of the ending as a whole. Starting from the beginning of the Shura path, we know that Sekiro's fate as Shura isn't truly set until he decides to honor the Iron Code and forsake Kuro. On the surface though, this seems contradictory to what we have heard about Shura, which implies that excessive violence is what leads to the birth of Shura. The difference here though is Sekiro's intent. Until now, Sekiro had no reason to question the Iron Code and was only doing what he had to do to survive, which is why Sekiro can't choose but to follow the Iron Code when Kuro asks him earlier in the game. This changes though once Sekiro sees Kuro resolve to reject the path that was decided for him, even at the cost of his own life. Now Sekiro is able to understand that choosing to follow the Iron Code is his own choice as well, and that following the Iron Code in this case would only lead to more needless violence. That's why his fate is decided once he decides to forsake Kuro. Moving forward, when we see Emma challenge Sekiro, she isn't doing so to foil their plan specifically. She is doing so to prevent Sekiro from becoming Shura at all costs. This indicates that even if she wasn't present when the sculptor lost his arm, that she recognizes the same tendency for violence in Sekiro that the sculptor himself once had. This is also when we learn that Emma herself is quite skilled with a sword and has received formal training, either from Isshin himself or perhaps from Tomoe. Her skills prove to be no match for Sekiro though, and she is eventually cut down. Afterwards, we see the flames of hatred begin to smolder and flare up around Sekiro, as with her death, Sekiro has begun a downward spiral. But Sekiro does not mourn her loss, and is instead seen smiling, reveling in the bloodshed for the first time in his life. Before now, there was a reason for him to kill, but for the first time, Sekiro has chosen to take a life directly for no reasons than his own, and his transformation into Shura has truly begun. Sekiro doesn't get to revel in this moment for long though, before he is interrupted by Isshin, seeking to avenge the death of Emma as well as prevent Shura from emerging for a second time. This fight is noteworthy to me for two reasons in particular. The first is that this is the only time in the game in which we get to directly see Isshin fight in his old age. This is not the revitalized Isshin that faces Sekiro in the other endings. This is an old man who knows his limits. Rather than a multitude of weapons, he faces Sekiro with only a blade, making sure to conserve his energy and take advantage of any opening. The other noteworthy aspect of this fight is that it shows us how Isshin most likely prevented the sculptor from transforming into Shura as well. He uses the flames of hatred to his own advantage. After all, Isshin is a man who has seen almost endless war and struck down countless foes. There is no doubt that as such he would be familiar with the flames of hatred as well. Unlike Shura or the Demon of Hatred though, he does not let these flames run wild or consume him. As a result, he is able to use the growing flames around Sekiro as a tool, striking with it and stoking it as he needs to best face Sekiro. Even that is not enough to overcome the effects of time though, and he is also defeated just as Al returns. Al returns to Sekiro, Black Mortal Blade in hand, to congratulate him on his defeat of Isshin as the flames of hatred rise higher. Manipulating the camera here also shows us just how Al came into possession of the Mortal Blade, as he can be seen holding Genichiro's severed head and placing it next to Isshin's corpse. Al then gloats about the success of his plan, only to be suddenly run through by Sekiro, who has now been fully consumed by Shura. He is no longer capable of distinguishing between anything such as friend or foe, and is instead now driven only by his insatiable bloodlust. Unlike the Ashura of myth, bloodshed was all Sekiro knew, so it became an obsession that causes him to run rampant throughout Ashina as he cuts down any and all that he can. Ultimately, the Shura ending is certainly a tragedy. Sekiro goes from being a tool used at the whims of his father to a tool used to satisfy an endless bloodlust. That said, I'm not sure I would consider it the definitive bad ending. After all, it is still the only ending in which we see Sekiro smile and make choices solely for himself, destructive though they may be. I certainly wouldn't call it a good ending either though, and the likelihood of the game continuing from this ending is very low. Yes, as fun as it would be to rampage throughout the battlefields of Ashina, this isn't Dynasty Warriors. Besides, the ending itself explains exactly what happened to Ashina and Sekiro afterwards, so there wouldn't be much point in trying to continue from there. Rather, this ending serves to show us just how easily one can stray from their own path, and the importance of the meaning behind one's actions. Well, that concludes our analysis of the Shura ending. If you have any other questions about the Shura ending, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out my other Sekiro videos linked below, which also use folklore to explain details that you might have missed in the game. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe or follow me on Twitter so that you can stay updated when my next video comes out. Until then, fellow folklorists.